This may look like your typical smallmouth point, and in fact it does have some smallmouth on it, but that's not what I'm here doing today. As I mentioned at the beginning of the program, not all normal smallmouth haunts are used strictly by smallmouth as far as feeding goes. In fact, some of these points can be used by largemouth and other predators at any given time of the day or the year. In a body water like this, where really rocky points are the only feeding shelves available to these predators, in fact, the largemouth will use these points even more so than the smallmouth, because keep in mind, they're one rung above the smallmouth as far as the food chain goes. They're just one step ahead. So they'll actually come in here and force some of the smallmouth out and start feeding on some of the crustaceans that are in the gravelly points and rock and mud in the area. And what you need to do, basically, is use the same good old largemouth baits that you use in other type of covers, such as weeds and docks and other type of structure, and that is a big old flipping jig. What I like to use is a stand-up jig. Now, I particularly like this jig in this situation because, as you can see, the bottom of the head is flat. So when it sits down on those rocks, the actual hook shank is facing straight up. With a good chunk of pork, you've got an awful lot of target for that fish to home in on. Even if it's a real gravelly bottom or a crevice that the jig has fallen into, you'll find that the actual pork is sticking up outside of the debris. The other thing I like to do is to put a good glass rattle on the shaft itself, keeping in mind that the prey that these fish are after are in most cases crustaceans or crayfish, and as they're moving around on the gravelly bottom, they do give off a bit of a rattle, and that's what this glass bead will do as well. Even though these riverside jigs do come with a pretty big and strong hook, what I like to do is grab a pair of pliers and just open that gap up a little bit, have the hook actually facing up when it's down on the gravelly bottom as opposed to forward. I just find that when you've got a vertical presentation like this, you get much better hook setting power when the hook is slightly in the north position, if you will. Now, just take that jig, toss it out on that top edge. Now, I'm fishing from the top down. You can fish something like this from the deep side up, but what I do recommend when you come into an area like this is to throw a topwater bait out first, like a Zero Spook, for example. Just pick up all those real aggressive fish that are actively feeding up on the very top of the point. Get them with a topwater bait or a spinner bait of some sort, and then work your jig down the actual stairway itself.